Did I say at the beginning of this? I don't remember if I said at the beginning of this, but next week there won't be a new episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think I forgot to say that, so maybe I'll put this little clip at the beginning too. Next week there won't be a new episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and basically, if you want to know why, I took a vacation. I took a week off for a vacation, and now it's catching up on YouTube. So yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with Part 5, Episode 9. So yeah. Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films back again with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Last time on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, we had 6 Bullets Appears Part 1. So yeah, after dealing with the dude, the stand user on the boat, Narancia, Mista, and Fugo decided to do the much-memed torture dance. And then Giorno was going to scout out Capri Island before the boat arrived because they knew that the dude's partner was going to be there. So Giorno and Mista went over there to do just that. And we were introduced to Mista's stand 6 bullets, which is like 6 little Ojama Yellows high on cocaine. So yeah. Yeah, and then they found the guy. Mista was able to shoot him in the leg, and then he escaped into a truck, and then Mista was on his way and was about to shoot him, and that's where the cliffhanger was. So yeah, it was an interesting episode, a little goofy. I mean, it's JoJo, so of course it is. But kind of dumb, kind of goofy, but hey, still enjoyable. So yeah. And yeah. Like always, the reaction is down in the description and in the pinned comment for your viewing pleasure. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Here we go. Oh, I really like Part 5. I'm really enjoying Part 5, I mean, what were we at? What were we at this time Part 4, This time Part 4 was just starting off the Yukiko arc. I really like Part 5. I mean, I enjoyed Part 4. Part 4 has highs and lows, but I'm 8 episodes in. I'm really enjoying Part 5. Even though, how many episodes have been about Giorno and how many episodes have been about not Giorno? Let's see. 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4. I'd say about a 4-to-4 ratio. About. There's a little grace in episode 5. Half about Giorno, half about everybody else. So, you know what? I'll give it a 4-to-3. 4-to-3 on how many episodes have been about Giorno, the main character, and how many episodes have not been about Giorno. We give a little grace to episode 5. I'm gonna call it a split. But of the 8 episodes, 4 episodes about Giorno, 3 episodes about everybody else. Alright. That's not a terrible ratio. That's still a majority to Giorno. But I'll be very curious pretty much what the ratio will be through the rest of Part 5. But I mean, I gotta say, even though... even just the last 3 episodes. While, yes, we had a bit of Giorno last episode, the last 3 episodes have been focused less on him and more on everybody else. And that's fine because you're also introducing the team. But I must say, they're a far better team, because you cannot... They never did an Okuyasu solo episode. I don't know how well that would have worked, And, but they did a ton of solo episodes about He Who Shall Not Be Named. And this is way better. This is way better, excuse me. If it's, Bucciarati, Abbacchio, And now, Mista, that's great. I love these guys. These guys are amazing. Okay. Arts and crafts. We gotta look that up a bit. JoJo. If I type in arts and crafts, is that even gonna get me to the stand? Okay, craft work. Craft work is apparently the actual name. Craft work with an E is the namesake. A German band formed in 1969. Okay. Yeah, they don't look familiar at all. So yeah, craft work. Which I guess that could be like how, this is a stretch, but how you can, like, the stand can, like, I guess sort of, it freezes things in place, but you could also say maybe it glues it into place. I'm going to say either way, it's a god-awful name. Whether you go with arts and crafts or craft work, neither of those are good names. But I like the stand design. Again, another humanoid stand, and I like that. And I know I went on this whole thing about humanoid stands, 2 episodes ago with Moody Jazz and Zipper Man and what was it, Tender Machine or whatever. So I like that. I will say it's hilarious that I go on this whole thing about humanoid stands and then we get 6 bullets because they are, incredibly different. But it's fine. But yeah, but interesting stuff. It's an interesting stand power, I mean, it kind of feels like, it kind of just feels like, sort of like scaling, like super scaling down the world, where the world freezes all of time. Arts and crafts freezes something in time, basically. So, you could kind of see it as sort of a similar thing. But honestly, and it took me a minute to really figure out what they were going for. But it's definitely just the, the whole thing of like, the stasis. I couldn't think of it. I could not think of it for the life of me. It's the stasis from Breath of the Wild, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, which you also, you can kind of see that in other stuff. Like, there's a hero in My Hero Academia who has a quirk like that, where it just freezes shit in time, basically. So, yeah. So that stuff's pretty cool. I like that. So, yeah. We got Mista's backstory. I like that we get all their backstories, I mean, we haven't... and by all of them, I mean, we've gotten 2. We haven't really gotten Bruno's. But, we got Abakio's and then we got Mista's this time. So I'll be curious about, like, Narancia and Fugo. And if we're going to get anything on Bucciarati. So yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, like, he is just this normal guy. And then somehow he just dodged all of those bullets and then got these perfect shots. I would be willing to bet that at the time he didn't have his stand. He didn't have 6 bullets. But I would imagine, because we kind of had that, with Giorno's backstory, where he didn't have his stand, but he did slightly use Golden Wind's power, before it truly was awakened in him, when I guess just Dio's blood started to awaken in him as well. So yeah, so I would imagine it's just sort of like that, this sort of like, pretty much, and you could honestly say it's sort of the same thing when, like, Josuke or Holly, you kind of see them when they're going through this sort of stand sickness. Like, it's a part of them, but it just hasn't sort of manifested. Or you could even like that's the popular thing with Joseph in part 2 is the reason, the popular theory as to why he was able to like predict his opponent's lines and stuff like that was because of sort of latent hermit purple, that sort of clairvoyance that, while he didn't have his stand, it wasn't unlocked until 50 years later. There was still a little bit of that power within him, and so I would kind of say that's sort of the same thing here with Mista, that no, he didn't have his stand yet, but that, I guess you sort of have that potential. And you could even say, because they mentioned like, well, everybody, according to Mista, everybody goes down the road they were supposed to, like there is destiny for everyone basically. And so you could even say like, well, that even maybe just proves it, you can't just get some random stand. You get a stand that specifically like is almost predetermined. Like everybody, I suppose, would have this sort of predetermination of what their stand potential could be. And that is sort of with Mista, where now his is ungodly goofy, let's all be honest. But you could honestly say it's like that, even long before his stand was ever awakened by the arrow, presumably by the arrow, he still had that. And in that sort of moment of like, high tense and adrenaline and everything, that power, sort of somewhat manifested for him, allowing him to avoid all of those bullets and fire 4 perfect shots, So they did say 4 perfect shots. That's interesting. I'm pretty sure they said 4. Maybe it was 3. I don't know. But I mean, he was able to shoot those guys. There was 3 guys. So it was probably 3 shots. But yeah, it could be something like that. And that's an interesting idea, this sort of, and especially, and I guess that could also be, like, maybe this isn't even something that is universal, like, on some people, like, that janitor that died a few episodes ago, when he was pierced by the arrow, he wouldn't have any sort of latent powers, but someone who is susceptible to getting a stand, someone who does have that potential, that talent, they perhaps might start showing before they even get a stand, I guess it could be like that. And we also have the whole thing of, and we haven't really had this for a long time, we haven't really talked about, I suppose, natural stands. Like, that's a concept I feel like we've kind of gotten rid of, but that is a concept. Kakyoin, Avdol, and Polnareff, they all said pretty much that they had their stands from birth, basically. And we definitely even see that with Polnareff in what is a god-awful episode, the Alessia episode, but still, the interesting thing about that is that Polnareff still has Silver Chariot, even when he's turned into like a 3-year-old, basically. So that is a concept we've seemed to have gone away from in JoJo, because originally we thought, oh, well, with the rebirth of Jonathan Joestar through Dio, thus Dio gains this stand, and because of Jonathan's body being reborn, thus, the Joestars get it. But that's not the case, as we learned that, the reason Dio has a stand was because he was struck by the arrow, but because of Jonathan's body, that also then translated to the Joestars, But, yeah, it's definitely something we don't really think about anymore, is the sort of natural stands. And a lot of times it seems like, with Mista or someone else, is like, they have the potential for a stand, but it's just never truly unlocked, Like, there seems to be different levels of like, well, there are those who have their stand, it is a part of them from birth, and those that have the potential to have a stand. And if they get hit by the arrow, that will finally unlock it, basically. And I'm curious if we'll ever go back into the difference between that, because that is a thing. That is 100% a thing in JoJo, That is 100% a thing, and I say that because I'm already like imagining the comments. I don't even know what y'all will say specifically, but it's as I'm saying this, I'm like, this sounds like a concept that either I'm wrong about or Araki forgot. I don't know, but that was a thing. That was a thing. That there are some stand users that have their stands from birth, and it's a concept that was dropped, especially dropped by part 4. Once you start getting the stand arrow, and obviously that's carrying over into this, And I think there is a difference between those, although I don't know, maybe it could be that, while yes, when Polnareff is turned back into a 3-year-old, he still has Silver Chariot. It could even be, because I remember there was one line of like, well, after pretty much around the time his sister died, he was starting to understand his power. He was starting to understand Silver Chariot and everything. So it could be that in time, you don't have to be hit by the arrow. The stand will eventually manifest, And I guess case in point being Giorno, that he had this power, this potential from birth, being the son, the biological son of Dio and Jonathan Joestar, but that, and it's only recently that the stand is fully manifested, Whereas for someone like Mista, perhaps he could have gotten there at some point, but the process was sped up by being hit by the arrow, And then there's some who don't have this at all. And this is not a dig, I'm just saying this as a reference, but Koichi didn't have this at all, He didn't have some weird sound power. I mean, he had his, he had his high-pitched voice. I don't really think that counts, but Koichi didn't have any of this sort of, latent power that was then unlocked as reverb. It was just, but then again, Koichi is also a different case because he was saved by Shining Diamond, Which I always hold that, too. This conversation's gone on way longer than I thought it would, but yeah. Basically, I like this episode and I like Mista. I don't know. I just went off about stands. I just realized, I finally took a step back and I was like, oh my god, how long have I been talking about this, But it's an interesting concept, and a concept that I do kind of feel like they don't really touch on again, There's part of it that I don't feel like they really explore, But who knows? Maybe they will. I mean, they kind of have the perfect venue for it, especially with Giorno seeming to be more like a Polnareff or Avdol or Kakyoin type. Like, he had this power, even if it was dormant, and later it finally truly manifested, but he wasn't hit by the arrow, So, we'll have to see. Okay. So yeah, arts and crafts, interesting stuff. Mista can fire 2 bullets at once. I don't know how that works, but good on him. I don't know how his stand does that to a gun, but hey, cool. Who am I to argue? He had 4 bullets, but he was able to overcome the bad luck of the number 4, which was interesting. And then yeah, we had the whole thing with the last shot, and specifically, that was really, really clever. All he needed to do was use that shot. He used his last shot to get the 6 bullets over there. Then, when that bullet started firing, they kicked it back and it aimed straight into the other bullet that he put in there and actually dug into his brain, which is crazy, But don't worry, he's still alive. He's still alive somehow. Maybe he's having a stroke, I don't know. But yeah, he's still alive. But yeah, a really, really interesting fight. And again, we're part 4, and again, I don't want to drag on about that, but we're part 4, whenever it would cut away from Josuke, and it's like, okay, come on. We have a really interesting main character. Here, I mean, here it is sort of the same. I think, at the very least, at this point, I do sort of prefer Josuke more than Giorno, but the rest of the team is really interesting. I mean, I'm still sitting here. I'm waiting for, Narancia and Fugo to, show their stuff. I mean, we don't even know what stands they have. But at the very least, like, 3 of the 5 other people on this team are really interesting. Bucciarati from the beginning has always been really interesting. And then seeing Abbacchio and now Mista, they're both really, really solid. And so it is at least one of those things where it's like, okay, yes, we're not sticking with the main character. And that was a problem I had more in part 4 than in part 3, Because even in part 3, like, the team was pretty much together the whole time, And I can kind of see that working again here. But that was a major problem I had in part 4, is getting away from the main character, who's way more interesting than some of your side characters, Like, sure, an episode about Rohan can be interesting, but it's a little hard. It's a little difficult, and especially when you go, like, 4 episodes in a row without anything decent from your main character, it's like, okay, come on, guys. But they kind of make up for that with a really great villain. And right now, we don't have our, really amazing villain. We just have our one-off villains. And they're good enough, but what works there is that the side characters we now have are really friggin' good, Bucciarati, Abbacchio, Mista, all A+ in my book. And I'm excited to see more from the rest of the team, as well as Narancia and Fugo stepping up. But we'll have to see. But yeah, really interesting episode. I liked it. Really good. And I'm excited to see where we're going next time. Did I say at the beginning of this? I don't remember if I said at the beginning of this, but next week there won't be a new episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think I forgot to say that, so maybe I'll put this little clip at the beginning too. Next week there won't be a new episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and basically, if you want to know why, I took a vacation. I took a week off for a vacation, and now it's catching up on YouTube. So yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with part 5, episode 9. So yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of my JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reactions, as well as another video you can go click on if you want. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.